It wasn't super great to begin with anyway. So
Yeah, agreed. So we'll see if it goes live in a second here, but I think I might need to hit the live button on the studio. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, so I do see it there. Oh, no, we are live, it looks like. Do you guys see it on your end?
yep, just came up.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we are officially live. What is going on, everybody? Thank you guys for tuning in. This is Maker's Minute, episode 4, which is crazy. I just started and it's already episode 4, which is a podcast. Afterwards, all of the audio will go onto like Spotify and iTunes and things like that. But it's a podcast I started because I wanted to do a bit more collaboration and really highlight a lot of awesome makers out there doing different things, whether it's with 3D printing or lasers or CNC. There's so many awesome creators that are making things. And so I figured this would be a really cool way to kind of for you guys to get to know them a little bit more, maybe learn some things, be entertained, and yeah, just talk with some awesome people. So on this episode, I've got Chaos Cortec, which is the dynamic duo of Garrett and Chelsey. I am so thankful that you guys are able to come on. And yeah, if you guys want to say hello and a little bit about maybe what you guys do to anybody that doesn't know.
Yeah.
Sure. Hi, my name's Garrett, and this is Chelsey. We have a YouTube channel called Chaos Cortec, and we 3D model a lot of stuff, print it out, and sometimes paint it. And we do product reviews and stuff like that too for printers. But yeah, we mostly focus on like 3D modeling our own stuff.
Right.
Anything to add?
Nope, lots of 3D modeling. That's like our main thing.
I feel like I should be your guys' hype man, because whenever I talk about your guys' channel, and like you guys come up a fair bit, like just when I'm talking to 3D printing people that are looking for like post-processing or models and stuff, I'm always like, yeah, Garrett and Chelsey are like the dynamic duo. They're like crazy models and like awesome paint jobs. So, like, if you guys ever need a hype man, like, you know, I don't know if that's a role you're looking to fill.
I think we're in need of one. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I discovered you guys a long time ago, and I made a video some years ago that was like my favorite 3D printing channels, and it was you guys. It was I think it was Heather and Travis over at Apiro Design. It was Lauren from A Buzz Design. And there was like a couple other channels on there, and you guys have like grown and done so much, and I thought you guys were already like doing amazing things back then, but since then you guys have really taken on like all sorts of levels. It's been really exciting seeing kind of your guys' modeling go from, which was already awesome, to like these really just crazy intricate detailed stuff. Like you must see that, right? Like the evolving that you guys have done with your work over the years when you look back.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you can see my whole progress because I started in Tinkercad, and basically, I think the second thing I made in Tinkercad is the first video, and the first thing I made was actually just a little back scratcher. So,
oh, nice.
Works great, by the way.
That's awesome.
Yep, that was the first one.
I'll need the STL for that after this.
I don't think I actually have the STL, but I could recreate it. It's pretty easy.
That's awesome, man.
So yeah, you're literally watching my entire progress with 3D modeling, and then I've been able to see hers over the past year just go nuts. I mean, she's always been artistic, so it's like she picked it up a lot quicker than I did, but
Yo, that's crazy, because originally when I was first watching and I described what you guys were doing, it was like, yeah, Garrett does like these crazy models and then they get printed, and then Chelsey comes in with like the sanding and the post-processing and like the crazy, like the one you guys did of the plant and like the tongue with all the details on it is insane. Like you just watch it getting better and better, and then you're like, no way. I think I showed, as funny as it is, my parents actually like really into the 3D printing stuff. I've got them pretty hyped on it over the years, and I showed them one of the videos because I was showing them off a resin printer and all the detail, and my mom, who does a lot of like oil painting on canvas, was like, oh, can you paint these? And so I showed them that plant video, and she watched it and was like, yeah, I don't know, man. She's like, that's insane, because like you just see it like super sped up, but just the amount of like steady handwork and things like that. And then over the course of the last, like you said, year here, Chelsey, you picked up 3D modeling, and like I remember one of the first big ones that I printed out was like your unicorn one that you released, which was awesome. Yeah. I love that unicorn. It's so cool. But yeah, it's just insane. Like you guys had your setup, and then now it's like Chelsey. Your modeling is insane. Like it's super impressive. I don't know, like if you don't think it is incredible. I'm telling you, it really is. So you showed the back scratcher. What was the first model that you did like that you saw and were like, yes, like this is badass? Like I'm assuming maybe it was because I knew you were doing Fusion 360 stuff for a while, right?
Yes. So I started in Tinkercad just because that was, well, actually that's a lie. I started in OpenSCAD.
Okay.
Or OpenSCAD. I don't know how you actually say it, but I'm a programmer. It's my day job. So programming to make 3D models kind of just made sense. And so I made a couple things. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the back scratcher might have been OpenSCAD. I don't remember.
Okay.
It probably was. But then I'm Tinkercad and my experience with like navigating around a 3D space and making 3D models for 3D printing. And that's when I made the well, and I originally got a 3D printer to do like some electronic stuff. Nice. So my first project was the flux capacitor from Back to the Future, and that's actually the first several videos on the YouTube channel because I did not know how to edit things down back then. So I filmed all of it. I'm like, yeah, turned into like an hour and a half video, so I had to chop it up a bit. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was the flux capacitor, I think. Yeah, it's over there somewhere.
That's awesome. Is that a project that you think that, like, have you ever done a project where you've done it and you're happy with it, but then again, like, times pass by, you look back at it and you're like, maybe I need to revisit that. Like, with your newfound set of tools, is that something that you think you'd ever do with some of the original models, or like you're happy with like the majority of them where they're at?
I would say a little bit of both. There are some models like the flux capacitor that, especially with like new technologies that have come out with 3D printing, because there's like some pieces on there that are clear.
Right. We could do like the clear resin now.
Yeah. It's like we have more capabilities to make it a little more accurate to what it was in the movie.
Yeah.
And I made like an R2D2 in Tinkercad, and I designed it with electronics, and it like halfway worked. It was too heavy for the motors to process, and I didn't want to redesign the whole thing to fit new motors. So eventually I would like to revisit those. But there are other things that we've done, like Thor's hammer. I made that in Tinkercad as well. And I don't see I like the way that it is, and it was always kind of a fun story. So that one I probably won't redo.
Well, I think a lot of people still print your model for that one.
They do.
Which it's just like, it's crazy that one was done in Tinkercad.
Yeah, that was one of my first ones too.
The Thor's hammer one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen specifically your guys' STL for that one. I'll have to look at it after the fact, because I've seen some pretty intricate models in Tinkercad, but it still blows my mind, because when I've used it, it's mostly like for some of the tools of like taking an STL and being able to like subtract an STL from something, like it does it pretty easily. And I've done a couple of like basic things, but it always blows my mind when I see something and I ask like, what'd you model that in? And they say Tinkercad. I'm like, you're pulling my leg. I know you are. There's just no way, man. But no, it's crazy. Like, it's such for being a browser based CAD software, it's impressive what you can do with it. And
for sure.
A lot of times, like, because I work with 3D printing for my day job, and a lot of times teachers will ask me for like students looking to get into it, they've got like Chromebooks. It's perfect for that, since they can't install anything locally, they have to work over the browser. It's crazy cool. And I didn't actually realize that you guys, so I know that at Murph in 2018, I saw you guys brought the Iron Giant, which was insane. And you guys had like music and LEDs and stuff like that. And it was epic. And, but I didn't realize that you actually, is there other projects that you've incorporated electronics into, or not so much? Because most of the models I've seen, like, they're finished and painted, but I don't really know that I've seen a lot of electronics involved with them.
So, well, like I said, electronics was kind of the reason I got into 3D printing.
Yeah.
And I've always had an interest in like making video games, so 3D modeling's always been on my radar. I just never like took the full jump to go there because it was a lot, and a lot of the software is really expensive. So a lot of my early projects were electronics based, and like we did. Well, the flux capacitor, that one worked because it was just LEDs.
Yeah.
And those are pretty easy. You just got to make sure the battery gets power to them.
Yeah.
But then I did R2, which that one didn't really work. I could make the head turn, and there was an LED that blinked, but he wouldn't roll just because it wasn't strong enough.
Yeah.
Then I did, I made like a flashlight at one point. a 3D printed flashlight. That one, it wasn't that impressive. And then I think probably the Wally was the most intricate one. I also designed that in Tinkercad. That was the last one I did in Tinkercad.
The whole Wally model was in Tinkercad?
Yeah.
Dude,
yeah, even with all the tank treads and everything.
That's insane.
Yeah, that was when that project was basically while I was trying to figure out Fusion 360. Gotcha. I had intended to do it in Fusion 360, but I got frustrated trying to learn it, so I just went back to Tinkercad for it.
That's fair.
And then I did the same thing with that one that I did with R2, because I had motors and I'm like, I'm going to test it this time. It's going to work. So I got the whole bottom part printed and everything. Yeah. I hooked up the motors, tested it, it rolled. I'm just like, yes. And so I had Chelsey paint it, printed out all the rest of the pieces, got it fully assembled, and the upper half of it was just too heavy and it wouldn't turn. So if I picked him up, the tank treads would go. But if I put him down, it wouldn't. So I'm just like, all right.
Maybe if you got a bunch of helium balloons,
pretty much.
Yeah.
And I just... Wally ended up taking me like 3 months to get done.
Yeah.
And so that was basically why I stopped with the electronic stuff. It just took too long.
Yeah.
So, and the 3D, I had done a couple of other just like regular 3D models that didn't have any electronics. And they were doing pretty well on the channel. So I was like, I'll roll with that rather than trying to monkey with electronics.
It's really tough to balance. Like, there's projects myself that I really like to work on, but you know, I've done projects in the past where it takes a lot of time and you're like really proud of it. And then you post it and you're like, what the heck? Nobody's really interested in this thing that I took forever on, you know? Because electronics are something that like I've always been really interested in adding to my projects. Like there's a couple creators out there that I've seen do some really awesome stuff. And I actually 3D modeled, it was probably one of my last, like actually spending a lot of time 3D modeling. And it was like an indoor, like smart garden, if you will. The concept came from, we wanted to grow herbs and like basil, chives, dill, like just random stuff for cooking, and our outside patio was covered by a big tree, so a lot of the plants didn't grow very well. So I was looking on Amazon and I was like, these $100 basically LED stations, I was like, I can make this. And so I went and started modeling just basically like a top that goes up and down that holds like daylight LEDs and has different like potting sections where the water could flow. But I really wanted to like add an Arduino with a pump setup where the water, like on a timer, would automatically like go through tubes and water the plants and stuff like that. And the amount of time it took just to research that, in the end, I'm just like, I basically opted for, and I still haven't printed it. It'll hopefully happen sometime soon, especially since now everyone's taken up gardening with us being stuck inside. I'm like, this is the perfect time.
Right.
But it's basically just a box with an LED hooked up to an Amazon smart plug that you control the timer on your phone instead of doing it from it. I was like, it's easier and more people might be able to actually do it, you know?
Right. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always really cool seeing like just some of these projects, whether they're like cosplay stuff with like crazy NeoPixels and servos built into them and things like that. Like it's always insane. But yeah, just I would imagine modeling something in general, which again, the level you guys are doing is way more like complex, but being able to do that and then add electronics just seems like a whole nother level of headache, you know, to try to do.
A lot of modifications.
Yeah. You got to print and test.
Yeah.
And I probably would have gone back to Wally, but it was just too advanced for Tinkercad at the time. And like towards the end of me working on it, it was so slow that it was almost unusable. And then something happened and my file got corrupted for it.
Oh,
so geez. I actually can't even get back into it to like change it. But
that's
so
I mean,
do the whole thing.
Yeah.
You're like, no, man. You're like, I'm good on that.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm gonna call that a win.
Yeah. Well, especially too, like I know that when you guys are doing some of your prints for the channel, like the one I remember specifically that was a ton of work for you guys was the Buzz Lightyear model. I remember seeing you guys.
A printer.
Oh, it was, okay. Because I remember you guys posting and like it was, and I think you guys did do a video on that because I saw like all of the different parts that you showed and I was like, holy crap! Like I've done very little with multi-material in general. Like I've got a palette that most of the printers that I had such poor extrusions that it just was so inconsistent that I couldn't get much other than like the keychain turns out great. Everything else looks like shit. You know? But yeah, so like I could imagine doing that and the amount of time it takes to do the swaps, and then if you were trying to do something like that with electronics and it fails, like that's just so much extra work. But the end result's insane. And I mean, have you guys been like with the models as of lately? Was the Buzz Lightyear the last big multi-material one that you guys did, where you guys used an FDM printer, or have you guys done a multi-material one since then?
Was it Buzz or was it Optimus? That was.
I think Buzz came out after Optimus, I believe. Let me look at my videos. I can't remember.
Yeah, Optimus, from what I saw, was like less difficult, the printing side of it for you guys, right? Versus Buzz. Buzz seemed to be
that one. Well, because for that one we used the Prusa.
The MMU one.
The Mark II with the MMU one, and that one just kind of worked, and it probably gave us false hope for how easy it was to print MMU things. Like I think I only had one failure, and it was like something that I did wrong.
Well, but like the palette for Buzz was not the issue.
And it wasn't the palette. We tried to use the Robo R2, and that printer was just garbage.
I remember you guys talking about that. Actually, I do remember that.
We talked a lot about that
because you guys backed the second one. I totally remember this now.
Yep. Yeah.
We did Shrek. We did a multi-material Shrek that was like armored, but that one wasn't near as cool as Buzz.
Yeah, Buzz was pretty epic, man. Buzz was pretty insane. Yeah, that was a really, really cool one. And since you guys were using Fusion, if I remember correctly, didn't you guys transition? You guys are pretty much using ZBrush exclusively now, from what I've seen.
Yeah, definitely the majority, like probably 98%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I still use Fusion for more if I need anything to work mechanically, or if it's very geometric type stuff, then Fusion's still easier for that type of stuff, just because CAD is built for that,
Yeah. Yep.
So I definitely still use Fusion. Like I actually just 2 days ago made a model in Fusion for an upcoming project.
Nice.
And I've actually been using Blender a lot lately. I haven't really shown much of that in the videos, but that's where I've been spending most of my time lately.
Interesting.
I use it a little. It's still, I just haven't grasped it completely.
Well, and I'm venturing, not necessarily for the channel, but just for my own interests, venturing into like animation type stuff.
Sick. And Blender I know has got a huge side of it that's geared towards animation.
For sure. And so, I've been learning, how to material and texture things, and, rigging and posing and that type of stuff. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Post it somewhere, whether it's on your channel or not. Post it somewhere, because I'd like to see,
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, because Blender, when I was originally transitioning from 123 design years ago, which I hated so much. Like the software I didn't necessarily hate. It was that it crashed all the time and did not save anything. So when I found, and I was playing around with stuff before I found Fusion, I downloaded Blender because it was one of the top free design softwares that was out there. I opened it up and was like, nope. And I closed it out and got rid of it. And I've talked to quite a few people about that to someone looking to get into it, from the outside looking in, it looks very overwhelming in my opinion. But I have heard that Blender did a pretty big update in the past 4 or 5 months. So have you seen old Blender versus new Blender?
Yeah, and actually way long ago, I don't know, 2010-ish. Because like I said, I've always been into video games, and I'm a programmer because I wanted to make video games. And so at one point I went to my local bookstore back when those were a thing, and bought a book that was how to make video games.
Nice.
And there was parts of it that were 3D modeling. And at that point I tried Blender. And yeah, it was awful. I made a couple 3D models. They were I had a reference image, and then I just kind of traced it as much as you can in 3D software. So they weren't good. But I finished the models or whatever, and so I had some experience, but it was so not intuitive, and I constantly had to Google different shortcuts, and I could never remember the shortcuts because it was one thing that I did one time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was horrible, and I just felt like I would accidentally hit the wrong key, and it would just screw up everything to a point that I couldn't fix it.
Super frustrating, yeah.
Yeah, and so I gave up, and I didn't try again for a long time until all this 3D printing stuff, and but yeah, recently they did the 2.8 update, and holy cow, it's super intuitive. It's
well, and we took J-Walls.
Yeah, J-Wall.
Print that thing.
He has a course for learning Blender.
For 3D printing specifically.
Nice. Okay.
And it's a super good course. But the new Blender, it's intuitive. It works well. It's just like, it's honestly the best piece of 3D software I think that's out there, at least that I've seen, and I've tried to experience as many as I can. Like, I've even used Maya.
Yeah.
I've used 3D Studio, 3D Studio Max, 3D Max,
3D Max,
3ds Max.
Oh, 3ds Max. That's what Travis uses.
That's what
right?
Travis uses.
Right.
Yep. And I've used that a bit, and yeah, Blender blows them all out of the water, and Blender's free. So
that's insane. And Blender though would be, again, for like doing organic modeling, like sculpting and things. No,
you can do mechanical stuff in there, because it's what's called box modeling. So you're actually like moving around the vertices and stuff like that. They do have a sculpting section.
Okay.
So you can kind of do ZBrush like stuff in there.
But they have you can get specific measurements, unlike ZBrush, where you can't do that.
Yeah, ZBrush doesn't really work with real world units, and you can't say that I have something and I want to move it 1 unit to the right. You can't do that in ZBrush.
Or you want like a 2 centimeter cylinder hole, you can't.
Yeah.
How do you gauge, if you're going to make a hole in something, how do you gauge it? Just eyeball it?
It's somewhat, and it depends on how accurate it needs to be. And that's one of the big problems with ZBrush for 3D printing, is it's not made for 3D printing.
Yeah.
It's made for video games where you can scale everything, Mostly how I handle it, you just have to get a little clever, because normally, say that you have an action figure or something where you have a torso and then the arm needs to go into it, and you would have a hole in the torso and a peg on the arm, so you could just pop it in. Basically, what I would do is instead I would have a hole in both places and make the peg its own thing, so I could just scale that independently.
Gotcha.
In the slicer and make it fit. And
so it takes a little bit of playing around with, and it's almost like a hack, if you will, how to make two things fit together. So interesting.
Definitely. But in Blender, and now what I do when I need to do that is I just take the files out of ZBrush, take them into Blender, and do all the fit together stuff there.
What's the file format that you export that Blender's able to interpret and keep the data?
Anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can take in STLs, you can take in OBJs, you can take in Maya files, you can take in FBXs.
Wow.
There's a bunch of different 3D softwares. One thing that I'm learning with 3D software, because 3D software for 3D printing is relatively new, because 3D printers are relatively new.
Yeah.
So there really isn't an established workflow for that, but people have been making animations and 3D models for video games and movies for a very long time. And, it's multi-billion-dollar industry every year for video games and movies.
Maybe not this year.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I'm sure they're doing.
There's
fine.
A lot of it. Yeah.
But so there's one, and what I'm learning is that it's not just one software. If you talk to someone who makes files for video games, one particular 3D model will probably touch 10 pieces of software before it's game ready.
Jeez.
And it's just every software does something better than the other software.
So you're just flip-flopping all the time.
Yeah, and Maya or ZBrush actually has an export thing that it's called GoZ, and I don't know if you can probably get it to work with Blender, but it's built specifically for Maya, where it's a one-click thing that'll kind of package up your model and open up Maya and open up all the things in Maya, and then you can click something in Maya to go right back. So
that's cool. So at least there is little things to make the integration between the different softwares a bit easier. But that still sounds really frustrating, a bit. I typically again, if you can't do it, you can't do it. But having one piece of software that you can handle start to finish sounds like it'd be much nicer than flip-flopping and going through all these different phases. But if it works,
it requires a lot of planning.
Yeah, absolutely. So out of curiosity, since you guys recommended somebody for learning Blender and you guys do a lot of modeling, where can people find that if they want to learn Blender? Is that a Udemy course, or how did you guys do that course?
He has his own thing. I'll find it and put it in the chat.
Okay.
He has his own website that he does, but it's very similar to a Udemy or a Skillshare.
Was it on that?
I think so.
Oh, that's print a thing.
Oh, print a thing.
Is it YouTube based, like they're unlisted videos that you basically watch in order type thing, or no?
No, he hosts them himself.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you're right there.
Yeah. Okay. Here I've got it. Let's see if I can post a link in the chat. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, sweet. I'll also post it in the description.
Do you know JWall, Jason?
It sounds familiar. Like, I'm terrible. Like, unless I see or know your face, like, it's really tough.
He used to have dreads, and he printed like cat armor.
He did the cat armor, yeah.
Okay, I know the cat armor, of course, like the one with the little spikes on the shoulders and stuff. That was Okay, so I know of his work. Okay.
He's a super cool, super nice guy. Like,
it's impossible to talk to him without just like the biggest smile on your face. He's just got infectious positivity.
That's awesome.
But yeah, super nice guy. He was one of the OG 3D printing YouTubers, and he's actually who introduced me to everybody. Like before I had talked to anybody in the community, before I even really knew there was a community. He found me and he was just like, hey, you want to be on a live stream? And pulled me into a live stream that had Joel, Travis, and Chuck, and I think a couple other people.
That's awesome.
On it. And that was my introduction to everybody right there. So
yeah, that's sick. Okay. Yeah, I'll also, that link, I'll find it or ask you for it after too, so I can post it if anyone watches after the fact, because I do get questions all the time from like people I know personally, as well as just out and about that, like through online stuff, that ask like, what's the best modeling software? And again, I just say based off what I use, Fusion 360 works great, but there's a lot of options out there now, and it sounds like a lot are getting better. And so certainly, Blender might be an option for some people that they'd want to consider. So, and that was actually one of my questions I'd actually written down was like, when you guys were first going from, and again, I know that you have, you've had an interest, Garrett, for a while in video game modeling and design and stuff like that. But when you guys were first getting into all of the 3D modeling stuff and you were learning, what was your biggest resource? Was it YouTube videos? Was it just diving in and screwing around with things to see what worked and what didn't? Like, I'm just curious, like, if there's a place that you found or a resource. Obviously this Blender tutorial sounds great, but like, what were you guys using to kind of learn some of the basics before just, taking off the training wheels, so to speak?
Well, I used almost exclusively YouTube. I've always taught myself things. Like I don't do well in a traditional school environment. Just my brain doesn't work that way. Yeah. And so I like to basically what I'll do is I'll open up the software because I'll be aware that a software exists and that's kind of what I should be using. So I'll open it up and I'll kind of see, and I'll try and click around and just see what I can do. And you like almost immediately hit a wall. And then I'll just start Googling. Like, I'm like, I know I want to do this. I'll Google how to do that. And usually I get the terminology wrong, but I'll poke around a bit till I find what I should be searching.
Yeah. And
that'll lead me to some videos. And it's usually some, really crappy video that the audio is terrible and I can't understand the person, but, so I'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
And, I just continue to do that, and it's just like, I don't know, you start, and then I try to make something, and then as soon as I've gotten to the point that I made that, I start something else, and just I keep doing it because, and one of the things that is the most counterproductive to learning something new is like doing a little bit of it and thinking, okay, I kind of understand that, and then not doing it forever.
Yeah.
You just need to keep doing it, and it'll eventually sink in, and it'll become like riding a bike that you can always go back to it.
Yeah.
But you had quite a bit of a different experience.
Well, yeah, I feel like you just like taught me a few things, and then I just was like, sure, I get it. And then I struggled forever with it. And then,
well, and that's because she has done mostly ZBrush stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've seen videos and stuff of ZBrush that it's like you start out with a sphere and you just it's pretty much like clay. You just start pushing, pulling. There's a couple different brushes you can do weird things with. And there's a lot more that you can do, but at its core, that's what it is. And so I think that her being, because I mean, have you seen some of the cakes that she used to do?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So she's always been very artistic and capable of those type of things. Mm-hmm. So I think I just needed to show her a couple things to get her running, and then just through doing it more and more, she has learned how to do it more efficiently.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Still learning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you ever quite master it, but
no.
I think it's one of those things too, where like people use ZBrush for their entire careers, and if you can master it over the course of a year, then like
Yeah.
And it's funny because you mentioned one of the worst things you think you do is learn a little bit of something, feel like you've like mastered it, and then move on or something like that. And totally guilty of doing that plenty of
Oh,
times.
me too. Me too.
And I will say, like, have you ever like, so for some tutorials or some things I've done, there's been times where I need to redo it later on down the road, and like I'll reference my own tutorial and be like, that's how I did it. Have you ever seen yourself doing something like that where you're like, how did I do that with this model or something like that?
Oh, for sure. I actually found it was a document that I had. I could probably find it if I search hard enough. Um, but when I tried to learn Blender the initial time, I made a document and I had screenshots. I tried to like go full documentation mode to remember how I do just simple things, because there was so many button clicks and there was so many weird like shortcuts that I had to remember. So yeah, absolutely. If there's something weird that, well, back then, before I really knew it, I would try to document it
Yeah.
and figure out, so I could repeat the steps. Now, if I'm finding something that's kind of a cumbersome process, I usually try to like, if I'm doing that a lot, I'll go out and try and see if there's an easier way to do it, or maybe try and come up with something that's, a little bit more of a nice workflow so it sticks in my brain better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll watch tutorials and stuff multiple times, like once to figure out how to do it, go try to do it, and then go back and watch it again to like pick out some of the finer details,
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a good idea.
One thing that I've noticed that's kind of crazy with modeling stuff is that there's not necessarily one right or wrong way to do things. Like there's a lot of people, like you tell 10 people make this model, and the tools they use and the way they get there is completely different. So it's really cool to see that. And it's funny though, like you'll do stuff like starting off even in Fusion, I needed to create a certain amount of like holes around an object, and I'm taking the sketch tool and drawing lines and measuring them out from each corner, and taking forever just to do basic holes. And then I'm like, oh, what's this like a pattern tool basically that was able to just click, this is the center point, this is how many I want. So it's funny how you'll do something and it'll work, and then you'll discover a tool and then you're like, never again, like never again will I return to that,
Yeah.
So I would imagine that even with any software, whether it's Blender or ZBrush, you're doing things originally and you're like, oh sweet, like that's awesome, this is so useful. So I feel like even if you know the software and you're able to get from point A to point B, there's always ways, like you said, to kind of speed up the workflow and just get from A to B much quicker than what you initially thought was the way to do it. So
every time I'm like working on a project and Garrett will come over and I'm showing him something, and then he's like, just do this. And I'm just like, what? He's like, just do this. And I'm like, cool.
Sweet.
I've just been doing it the harder way for like this whole time.
That's
awesome.
It reminds me of like the old Microsoft Word paperclip that like you can click when you need help. Like it'd be nice to have someone there, like the one that like waves at you with it. That's funny. Okay, so out of what you guys have worked on, what would you say is and independently, I want to know both of you guys, what is your favorite model that either you guys have done together or separately to this point? Like it doesn't have to necessarily be like how it turned out after post-processing, but just like model in general that you guys have created.
First, I would like to, because like originally we pretty much separately worked on models, but like anymore, most models that we make, we pass back and forth quite a bit. Because like there are certain things like clothing and like wrinkles and shirts and pants and stuff like that,
like the Rancor.
Yeah, that too. Just like very organic things like wrinkles or hair. I am just not super good at it, and because my brain just doesn't work like that. Randomness of nature
to work like that.
Yeah, no, I haven't worked on that skill.
Not natural, like not a natural thing that comes to you with that.
Yeah, my brain is very like mathematical and scientific, and I have to try very hard to shut that off in order to make something look decent random, because I try to make patterns, and hair doesn't look good if it's patterned. And Chelsey's a hairstylist as well, so she knows cool hair things as well. But but I'm usually quicker at making like base shapes. And like some of the more like armor type stuff that's a little more hard surface, I'm a little bit more efficient at. So I'll usually do that, pass it to her, and she'll do like some of the finer detail stuff, and then we'll pass it back and forth a couple times. But I don't know what models So for some of the more recent, I don't have them sitting over here. I've been doing some D&D miniatures,
I saw
and
that you
those ones
guys talked about
actually,
that on your Patreon or something like that, right? Is where you guys have been posting those? Yeah, I really want to see those. I'm gonna have to go to you
yeah,
guys' Patreon.
yeah.
Like, which
No,
ones?
they're tucked
Are they
away.
Okay.
downstairs? Might be downstairs.
But they're yeah, we did like a goblin, I think was the first one, and then I did a bugbear, and
I know where they are.
yeah, they're in there
Well, and I
somewhere.
have all those.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah.
But the so I took those through the full process of like modeling them in an A pose, and which is just means they're like pretty standard, and they're just standing with their arms out, you
Yeah.
know, like you normally see 3D models for video games and stuff. And then I took them through, fully modeled and detailed them and everything, and then took them to Maya to retopologize them, took them to Blender to rig and get all the, you know, an armature set up so it has bones and move it around. So, I mean, a ton of work to set up these models.
They're not fully painted, some of them.
Yeah, these aren't fully painted, but you can see this one's this is a
sick.
goblin.
That's awesome.
So he started out in
just like base pose mode, essentially.
yeah, and like, well, here I've got, so like these two came from the same model. They've got
awesome,
different
man.
weapons and everything, so I could like fully pose them. They have a nice low, you know, they're retopologized, so they have a decently low poly count, and the loops and the sections kind of flow in a nice way.
Those
and
are
like,
awesome. Those are sick, man.
These ones are, this was the knoll, which is like a hyena creature.
Awesome.
And those all came from the same model as well.
That's
so I don't know, those ones are more rewarding to me
Yeah.
because I can do things with them afterwards. I can pose them, get new models out of them, but it takes so much work to get them to that point. What about you?
Oh yeah, I know. First years, I got another question about the reposing of models.
Yeah, go ahead. I don't know, because it's like I like painting wise the ones I worked on. The Plants vs Zombies ones, like the all the plants that I did, those were probably my favorite to like finish. I mean, not sanding wise, because those were even resin. I still did like a lot of sanding on them.
Yeah, for sure.
But those were probably my favorite to paint.
That one was resin you guys did, right?
Yeah, that one was printed on the PO Poly, the Phenom.
Okay, sick. Yeah,
this one. I thought this was FDM.
No, that one's the.
You guys did an FDM version of it though, right? At one point.
Yeah. That one, yeah, because I printed the one without the horns.
Oh, that's right.
On the MK3.
That's an insane model. Like that looks like something that'd be straight out of like the new Doom game or something like that. It's so cool.
Well, I was pretty proud of that one.
Yeah, that's
you should be. It's really cool. I liked all the skulls and stuff around the base.
No, that's insane. I really like that model. Yeah, when I saw it, I was just like, the first, you just see it, and it's just one word to describe it. It's metal. It is a metal model.
For sure.
Yeah.
So going back to the repositioning of the models, like, once you've gotten it to the point where you can move them, how easy is it for you to do that? Like, just reposition them and add some things. Like, is it pretty dang easy, or is it still like pretty time consuming? Because I'm assuming you have to add like still like the arrow or the spear and stuff like that. But it must cut quite a bit of time out of the whole, from beginning at least to end result.
So getting a model to that point is extremely time consuming and fairly difficult, because like, I don't know, if I were to model something in ZBrush in like the pose that it's in, like if I were to take this guy and I were to just model him in this pose, right? It would, I don't know, probably take me 6 to 8 hours of modeling time. Modeling him in an A pose maybe takes like 30 minutes to an hour less, just because symmetry helps with a lot of things, can speed it up a little bit. But then, if I modeled it in that pose, it's done. I can print it at that point, but then that's all I can do with that model.
Yeah, it's done.
If it's in that basic pose, then I take it to Maya, which retopology, basically it comes down to I'm recreating the model. I'm using that as like a basis, but I don't reuse anything from that model. Basically, I map a whole.
Yeah, you're like placing every single like polygon.
Yeah, And so, and it works in quads. So it's not triangles, but it's two triangles. It's a square, so it's 4 points, and you basically hand place every single one of those, and it'll come out to like 3,000 to 10,000 polygons. And you're literally, I mean, I guess half, because usually there's enough symmetry that you can mirror
since
half of it,
one side's posed the exact same as the other. If you cover
Yep.
half, it'll go to the other.
Yep, symmetry is your friend where you can do that. There has to be a very specific like loop flow, because you don't want a weird triangle. Like if you move the elbow to have a triangle sticking out here, so you want to have nice loops around. So there's an art in the way you do that too. And a lot of times that retopology will take me just as long as it did to model it,
if not longer
sometimes.
It sounds much more tedious too. I feel like when you're modeling stuff, you can maybe like have a little, there's probably a little bit more enjoyment, but when you're having to focus so heavily, like that does sound very tedious. Like me not being a very patient person, I would spaz out, I feel like.
And see, I'm actually the opposite way. I tend to stress when I'm actually modeling, because that's where I'm making the actual changes and I need it to look good.
You're like making
so it takes a lot of brain power in that stage.
Gotcha.
But when I'm retopologizing, there's very few areas that take a lot of brain power, and it's more just kind of clicking around. Gotcha. And getting things to work, so I can throw on some music or something to watch and just kind of like phase out for a bit. And I like doing that. So but then from that point, I have to take that model out, and you have to do that for all the different pieces. So like for the body, for the clothing, if he's got like hair, a lot of those are different pieces, and you have to kind of do those individually. So it just helps when you move them around to not have them all attached.
Yeah.
So I take all those into Blender, the low poly ones. And then you basically build an armature, which is basically placing bones. And that's basically like, I'll put one in the shoulder to be able to do this, one in the elbow to be able to do this, that type of thing.
Yeah, adding joints, like movable pivot points, I guess, if you will.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. And then there's the process of like weight painting. And that's the hardest part for me, just because it's basically how much influence does that bone have over each vertice. So like an elbow is a good thing. So it's like shoulder, sorry, elbow down here.
It's all right.
I just click. I don't whatever. You know what I mean. But no, so I'll put the bone basically right here will be the pivot point, and then the bone will go down here, and there'll be another pivot point in the elbow, shoulder, this one. But so parts. You're doing this, and this whole section right here is influenced 100% by this bone.
Yeah.
Right. So that one will be completely, it's red to show that it's fully influenced.
Yeah.
But around here, your skin right here kind of bunches up when you move your elbow up. Mm-hmm. So you can't have like a hard cutoff here that, this bone stops influence here and then this one picks up, because then you just have a hard chunk.
There used to be some like bleed into the segments essentially.
Yes. And there's a lot of like, there's weird stuff that happens down here. So you're basically like, the weight painting is creating like musculature and how your skin moves and stuff like that. And there's a lot of art that goes into that. And, especially around the face, it gets really difficult.
Yeah.
Like facial expressions and stuff.
And Blender has a lot of tools to make that easier. So processing that, it takes a long time. So it's pretty much triple the time of just making one little figure. If I would just pose it that way in ZBrush. It pretty much takes 3 times the amount of time to make it riggable and stuff like that. But once I have that, it's very easy to pose and like swap out weapons and stuff like that, because I basically just have a bone sticking out of the hand somewhere that I can attach a different weapon to, and then it moves with the pose and everything. And crazy, man. I can, after that point, I could probably make 3 different poses in 2 hours and have them ready to go.
Damn. So it definitely makes sense for the sake of like if you're doing like D&D minis or stuff like that, or for tabletop games, because obviously you want like an archer goblin like you had, like like a warrior and like different types of like mages or things like that. Like okay, but if you're just, it doesn't make sense to do it for every model if you don't plan on reusing it. It's insane if you're
correct.
Jeez,
for
man.
Sure.
That's insane, because I actually like picturing it. It sounds insane. I'm sure going through it is even crazier, but like just seeing the regular modeling process to me requires a ton of patience. So to do all that extra stuff just to get to that point, like that's a whole nother level of patience and dedication. Have you dabbled with that at all, Chelsey? That no.
So I was trying to learn some of the retopology. We did like a really, really easy one. but I'm just like, no, this
Nah, man.
Well, and to be fair, we tried that in Blender, and
Okay.
the default
True.
tools that Blender has for retopology aren't very good.
right.
So it's a little more tedious in there. I'm lucky enough that I have access to Maya. Some school helped me get access to it. So, and Maya has pretty good tools for retopology. There is a plugin that you can get for Blender. It costs like $80. So if you're wanting to do retopology in Blender, that's definitely the way you should go. And it looks amazing. I haven't used it, but I've watched some videos. And if I ever don't have access to Maya, I'm definitely going to use that. It's called Retopo Flow, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah, it helps a lot.
Is it Maya yearly license, or do you guys just pay for a specific version, and if you want the next version, then you have to buy it all over again? How does it work as far as their licensing goes?
So I believe, like I said, I'm just got access from the school because I helped
Gotcha.
them with a bunch of stuff. So I didn't pay for it because I would never.
Yeah.
Because I think it's seriously like $3,600 a year.
Oh, jeez.
So and it's the like industry standard. It's what like
totally.
Avengers.
It's for professionals. It's not it's not meant for a hobbyist who just wants to dabble.
Right.
It's meant for like this is your career.
But the funny thing is like now having experience in that. Aside from like it does retopology better than base Blender does, but everything else I actually prefer Blender. Like
Wow.
it's a better program, like almost
Now.
objectively. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe it was before. It was just hard to use.
Yeah.
And Maya's still that way. It's hard to use. Things are kind of weird. And Maya being so expensive, there's like no information out there. Like there's probably 4 YouTube videos that have the word Maya and tutorial in them.
When it comes to Blender, do you know, is that something like, how are they able to do what they do? Is it open source? Like, is it the community that's, oh, okay. So there's
there is like an actual, I think it's called the blah, 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 blah. It's called the blah, blah, blah. Blender Foundation. And it's just blender.org. They do everything. I don't know how they get money. I think there are some like major game studios and stuff that will maybe pay for, not licenses, but just pay to them to keep doing what they're doing.
Right.
They have a whole studio of people that make like animations and stuff, like Pixar style animations. Not necessarily in like, cutesy stuff like that, but like fully CG movies basically. Because that's basically I think what they set out to do. They were like, if we're going to be making these tools, we need people here that use the tools to tell us, how to make them better.
Yeah.
So you can actually watch them. They've got some really, really cool animations. Like there's one that it was a few years ago, but it was like a chick finds a baby dragon, and it's a whole thing. But it's awesome. Very cool. Lots of effects, and it looks like a professional movie. So
it's crazy. Wow, that's insane. When it comes to, I was going to say the animation side that you're kind of starting to play around with, that's in Blender that you're primarily experimenting with?
Yeah.
And how is it going so far? Like just like sneak peek behind the curtains. Like how has it been going? The learning.
Oh, like I said, it's a ton of work.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get things ready to be used, but it's super rewarding because you can just once you have everything ready, you can kind of just do it, And one of the things that's kind of hard to learn is that there's so many different softwares out there that have so many different capabilities, and you have like excuse me, like lightning. Like say that I wanted to make lightning in an animation. You might think that there's some sort of like particle effects, or maybe there's some sort of plugin I can get that would make lightning, and there probably is, honestly. Mm-hmm. But you think it's like I need lightning, and you're probably thinking that I can Google something. They'll give me like there's a hidden section of Blender that I don't know about that's just like lightning. I can drag something in, but it's not. It's like you have to study how lightning works, and you need to mess with lights to make sure that lights come up at the right time, because if electricity is arcing, it gives off light, so you need to be able to do the light that does that. You need to it's really crazy how lightning is actually done in those things, because you basically make a model that is like several different arcs of lightning, and then you kind of like shift between them really quickly and rotate them so it always looks like a different arc. And you're like lighting them up and providing actual lights, because making the material look like it's bright and giving off actual light are two different things. And then there's other particle things you need to do because there's usually like static that goes around. So it's just like you basically have to study the real world. Lighting is everything. So
That's
I've been
crazy.
like, I mean, just today I've probably watched 4 hours of YouTube videos on people talking about how to light scenes to make them look like the real world. So it's like you have to have like crazy in-depth knowledge about very specific things because you're recreating them in a 3D world.
It needs to be typically believable. Like you want to sell it. Like this is lightning, although it's animated, it's lightning. This isn't something else. So that's crazy.
And you really can't take anything for granted either, because it's like, when you're a kid and like, oh, I want to make video games. My voice is cracking. I haven't talked this much in a long time. But it's like you think, oh, I could make a really cool character and he's going to do this really cool thing, and I got a really cool bad guy, right? So I need to make a character and I need to make some weapons and I need to write a story, right? And then we'll get to voice acting and stuff like that. And then, I mean, we've already gone over the character creation process pretty detailed. But so say that you've gone through all that, you have a character ready, and you're ready to start going. You have the character in there. What does he stand on? Is this going to be out in a field? Well, now you have to learn, how to make terrain. You have to figure out what you're going to do for grass. What does that grass look like? Is it realistic? Is it stylized?
The wind blowing the grass?
Yeah, and not only just like, how do you get a realistic grass texture? How do you, make it look random enough and put dirt patches in there? So now you got to make dirt as well. And you're going to spend so much time just making a ground that they can stand on.
A basic environment.
Yep. And then you have to worry about lighting and how all that works. And yeah, it's just like every little detail you have to know everything about.
It's crazy. I have a couple more 3D printing related questions, but I have one more question that's not related to 3D printing. Have you ever considered doing some kind of like an indie game, like whether it's simple? Yeah.
Well, like I said, I've been wanting to do that, and that's basically been my driving factor since I was 5. I just made the mistake of going to college to try and learn that, basically.
Yeah.
But so I'm severely in debt and have basically nothing to show for it. College, but so yes, I'm basically everything I do strives to me being able to make video games. The only reason I haven't is because video games take a very long time to make, and you basically have to be done with them before you make any money. And I don't really want to like try to reach out to publishers and get like a publisher telling me what to do. So
gotcha.
So
you want to do it fully independently, like just your own thing. That's crazy. That's awesome.
But yeah, so it's just having the time to do that, and I've been slowly building up the skills necessary to do it, I suppose, just because I don't really. I live in a relatively rural part of the country, Nebraska. There's not a ton of people around here that are into the same type of things, at least not to the level that I would want them to be at to work with me on a game, So it's just like I don't really have any like artist friends or musician friends or anything like that I can sign up for this, and I definitely don't have money to go out and hire these type of people. So I'm like, screw it, I'll learn all the skills myself. So like I said, I'm a programmer. I learned that. That's what I do for my day job. I wrote music in high school. We've got guitars and keyboards, and Chelsey was an orchestra
for 6
Sick.
years.
So we've got violin, cello.
That's awesome.
I've written music before. I'm not to the level I'd want it, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah.
But at least I know what goes into it and the software that I'll need to do it and stuff like that. And then I learned 3D modeling, and that's where the 3D printing and the channel came in. Yeah. I've gotten to a point that I'm comfortable making anything I need to in 3D modeling. I've got a lot of room to improve, but I can at least get something close to what I want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now I'm taking the step for like animation, lighting, and basically making characters look like they're believable,
Yeah, that's insane. Well, if you guys ever get to the step where all you need left is a hype man, I know a guy. I'll stand on top of an
really
overpass.
Bad at promoting myself.
Let me know, man. You give me a basic graphic and say no more. I'll figure out the rest.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so it's getting close to an hour. I have like 2 last questions if you guys are still fine with a few more moments here.
For sure.
Okay, so I know that you guys have been doing the 3D printing and modeling for a while now, and I know that you guys have also, like many of us on at least the YouTube community, have transitioned from all FDM to FDM and resin to a lot of resin type stuff. How has that changed the game for you guys? Because I know, like, I've talked with last month was with Uncle Jesse, and he does a lot of like post processing of some of like cosplay related stuff, and he gave me his point of view from like his perspective. But when it comes to you guys, not just in post processing, but in you guys creating these complex models, it has to unlock like a whole nother world of just things that, like, now it makes sense to do these crazy textures on FDM. You couldn't see this, but like how has that changed overall your guys' like from being able to model more complex things that you can actually print now? And then I'm assuming, Chelsey, that your hands are a little less exhausted from having to, I haven't done a lot of post-processing myself because I'm super lazy. Like, once it's off the printer, I'm like, it's perfect. So, but from what you're doing, how has that changed your workflow and the time that goes into what you guys are doing?
The time for post-processing is cut drastically. I mean, I would spend days sanding stuff before, days. And I mean, my fingers would be like numb and like sore, but
there would literally be like an area probably like that big that was just pure print dust. Jeez. And you kind of have to scoop it off. There would be little mounds of just dust that she had sanded off. That's insane. Each print.
Yeah, so that is like been huge. And then I mean, as far as like, it seems like models that I model are stupidly detailed. Like, I just keep adding stuff to them, and it's always like little pieces that it never would have worked with FDM. Like, it never would have worked. Like that Cockademon, that Doom thing, like, you could never, I mean, somebody could probably print that.
Yeah, but it would not look good on FDM.
And so it's been like awesome to be able to do a lot more detailed stuff, because I feel like that's like more what I'm interested in.
I was going to say, we've had our eyes set on FDM, or not FDM, SLA, basically since we got our FDM and realized what the limitations were. But back then, the only SLA printer you could get was the Form, and that's several $1,000s, so that wasn't going to happen.
Chunk of change.
The second the Moai came out, we were lucky enough to have a decently big enough channel that we got in contact with them and got a Moai, and I knew that would be the solution going forward.
So when it comes to that demon model that you guys did print one out on FDM though, right? I saw, maybe if it wasn't you guys, somebody definitely did an FDM print of it.
The Catalyst? Yeah, I did print one of those.
Okay, because it didn't look bad at all, but when you compare it to the resin version, it's just like, wow, this is insane to like get out of here. This is absolutely just crazy. Like, all the details on the, like, on his shoulders, he's got all sorts of markings, and on the rocks beneath him.
So this was the other one that she was talking about.
Yeah.
This one's from Doom.
He's adorable.
But it's like those little legs and everything on the bottom.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And the teeth are so like.
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't be able to do this on FDM very well. You'd need like dissolvable supports or something.
Yeah,
even then, it probably
still,
wouldn't come
the
in
teeth
good.
would still look really like janky compared to how clean those prints are coming off.
These are so sharp too.
Yeah, they're
even
very
like
sharp.
Actually sharp.
Yeah.
We printed out like Matter Hacker's mascot's the little astronaut guy, and they printed out a spiky version of him, which is just covered in like punk rock spikes. And you touch it with your hand, and you're like, "Oh my god!" Like, this is like, if you were to go hot potato and catch it, like, you'd be in pain. So it's pretty crazy how sharp the point can get on a resin printer. And I'm sure, like, with the teeth on that guy, you can totally see that. When it comes to the sanding, Chelsey, when you're sanding the prints that are coming off, so, like, on resin printers, the supports are obviously way different. They're like kind of like tree, pokes, if you will, or I don't know what I don't think tree pokes is the technical term, but they're like little spears or whatever. And when you remove those and have to clip those off, is that the pretty much only thing you're sanding, or do you just still do like a base sand over the model just to get a little bit of, like, I don't know, into the model?
For the most part, I basically only have to sand the spots where the supports were.
Okay.
Sometimes maybe I didn't like use enough supports and it's not like a completely smooth surface. You'll have a little bit of like, loose bumps, and then sometimes you'll have a little bit of shifting. not perfect layers, and I'm super nitpicky about that stuff. So if I see those, I'll try to sand them out. But I mean, that's basically it. I
That's
really
awesome.
don't do well, and then fill if the
Drain
model's
holes.
load.
Yeah.
Yeah, fill those up. But other than that, it's not a whole lot. And I use a tiny little like nail Dremel, like what they use at nail salons. I bought one of those because it's smaller and it's battery powered, and I don't have to have it, hooked up. And
Yeah.
I use that with just a little sanding thing on it, and it works like so fast.
That's for where the little spikes are at to get
Mhm.
okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, I've just been using that, and it's worked like amazing because you can buy so many different tips
Attachments
and
and
heads
stuff
on
for
it
it.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
so
what are you guys using to fill the drain holes with? Out of curiosity, what is it that works for you guys?
so in the past I've used wood filler, like
Okay.
the plastic wood filler stuff. Otherwise I've been using that 3M. What is it called?
Putty?
It's like it's a putty. It's like it's specific 3M brand, and Punished Props Bill, he uses it a lot. So I saw him use it, and I was like, well, that stuff looks like it works pretty well. So I've
Yeah.
been using that on the last few, and it does work really well. But you do have to like, I've had to do 2 like coats, so I'll fill it, and it'll kind of like sink in
Seep
a little
through.
bit.
Gotcha.
So I'll like fill it again, and once it's like fully dried at that point, then it works really, really well. And it's
That's
easy to
awesome.
sand too, like
Yeah.
super easy to sand out. So
I
not
really
Bondo, no. It's I'll figure it out.
okay.
I'll put it. We'll put it in the thing, but
Okay. I got one last question for you guys, and then we'll see if anyone's got any questions. So one thing I've been really growing more and more interested in is like actually making molds and casting, like resin casting and things like that. With the models you guys have done, and both of you nodding your heads yes. Have you guys attempted this? But it's certainly you guys have talked about it. I'm assuming at some point or another.
Yeah, we've got some molds sitting over there. We were gonna make some dice at one point. And Chelsea's even done some like, you've gone further with some resin things. Like I know it's different resin, but like resin painting and
yeah.
Resin is a word that's tossed around a lot, and it's not just printing.
Yeah.
For us.
Right.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, a lot of people that I've seen, like, her name's slipping my mind, but there's someone on Twitter that you guys must follow that does like insane D&D dice. Like that's what she's been posting obsessively for the last little while. I can't think. She's in the cosplay group, so I don't know exactly. I started following because someone posted her like crazy dice.
Her name's Steph, I think.
That sounds right. Yep. That
Yeah.
sounds totally right.
I'm super removed from like,
Twitter.
I'm not good at Twitter, so
Twitter's
I'm
kind
sure
of like
Chelsea showed me something.
only one that I've kept up with, but she's been doing basically like just resin pouring or resin casting. But yeah, it's not UV curing resin. It's just like standard mold resin, I guess, if you will, or something like that. But
right.
It's something that I've been super interested in because like the reason I got into 3D printing was actually for video game related stuff too. It wasn't for like creating my own characters, but for I've always had like a big love for retro games, and for a while there, my channel, I had a side channel where I was going out and hunting at like Goodwills and thrift stores and flea markets for retro games, and so I really wanted to be able to make like portables, and so that's why I got into 3D printing originally, was to be able to make like portables of like hacked up N64 boards and like SNESs and stuff like that you could then take on the road, because me doing stuff with my hands is just a no-go. I need the computer to help me out. But that's where resin stuff originally became interesting to me, to be able to like cast shells quickly, or maybe the buttons for it really quickly, and just it's, I mean, granted, 3D printers now with resin being able to load up a full tray of small things, it's pretty quick. Like the game has changed. It's changing I feel like every year. It's like last year was small resin printers. This year's affordable mid-sized resin printers. Like it's just every year is like a flavor of the year. But
For sure.
Definitely casting is something that I've always thought is just super cool. Even if it's like imagine the little Doom guy that you guys had, but like casting it in a soft melt temperature metal or something like that. Like how sick would that be?
It'd be cool. It's a lot more involved than it seems. Like getting a nice mold is like it's decently
hard.
difficult.
I mean, just because you have to have like a vacuum chamber or like a pressure pot
to
or
get all
whatever.
the bubbles out and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I originally was looking into
It's
it, and I saw even the price of silicone is not very cheap.
No,
I was like,
it's
it's expensive, because I was telling
Yeah.
myself like, yeah, I'll just make a little something. I'm like, great, for something that makes a square this big, it's like, you know, it was like $60 to $80 for a tiny
Yep.
little bit. So it's
Yeah.
definitely something where as you're pouring it, you're like, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
For sure.
if it was less of a barrier to entry and you didn't need all the pressure pot and stuff like that would definitely be something that I would have already gone into. But what's holding me back is like needing to have a very concrete reason to get into it. That way I can justify the cost of buying all of the components and stuff like that. But the couple people I have seen it, there's someone specifically on YouTube. I think his name's like the Veg Oil Guy or something like that, and he does resin printing and cast like jewelry, and it's insane. But again, he's got like the kiln or whatever to heat it. Like, dude, like I can't have that in an apartment. You know,
Right.
I had my maintenance guy come in one day and look in this room and was like, "What the hell?" And I'm like, "Keep going, keep going." You know? Nothing to see here. Yeah, because I had a power outage, and he looked in here and was like, "That's why you shorted your circuit, man. You got a laser." Yeah. So, anyways, okay. So it's definitely something that you guys have at least played around with a bit, then, with some of the dice and things like that. I just think it'd be super cool to see like some of your like crazy models, like again, even that little Doom guy, since it's not too big, but like just in all these different crazy variations,
Right.
you know, of resin pours and stuff like that, or like sparkly demon guy or something.
I was gonna say, different colors and stuff, and
Yeah.
how translucent you can get it.
So
Some of those
sick.
things just look so cool.
Yeah, I've definitely gone through the rabbit hole of YouTube and like started off with one thing, and like 8 hours later I'm like, damn, I've been watching resin videos for so long and I don't know how I got to this point, you know. So cool. Well, that's like pretty much the majority of the things that I wrote down bullet points, because like there's always things that like when I'm talking about your guys' channel or stuff, I'm like, I gotta ask them about that. So that was pretty much the majority of them. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions for Garrett or Chelsey about 3D modeling, about their channel, about stuff they're working on. Feel free to let us know, and then I guess after that we'll wrap it. Were you able to find the putty that you're talking about?
Our post was acrylic.
Yeah, it's acryl green spot putty.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 3M brand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I will post that. I don't know if like I don't see your guys' chat when it pops up or what the deal is, but I'm gonna write down just so that I've got it after the fact. So you said acro green?
It's like acrylic,
Yeah.
acryl green.
Spot.
Spot putty.
Yep.
And then
Here's
the other guy too that you talked about earlier that does the blend. Oh, perfect. Cool. Acro green Scott putty. Yep. And then one more time, the cat armor, the guy with the epic cat armor in the tutorials. What's his name? I want to find his tutorial stuff and post it in case anyone later on wants to take a look at it.
It is print that thing. I'll type it in the chat
Okay.
if you can see it.
Okay.
But just literally the words "print that thing."
Okay.
If you type that into YouTube, you'll come up right away with him. He goes by J-Wall, like the letter J and then like a wall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. I will write that
Super
down.
cool, dude.
All right, so Heather says, "Why are you so awesome?" And then that was followed by creator saying, "How does Garrett stay so handsome?"
Shut your face, Mello. Thank you, Heather.
NLTMW said, when is the next sculpt along? When do you guys plan on releasing? I know you guys said you have a video that's up and coming. Is that another sculpt that you guys have that's coming out, or?
You want to show us?
Yeah. We actually did this. It was the last sculpt along on the Friday night
not
hangout.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's amazing. You guys like teased it hanging or something like that on Twitter, because I totally it's from Ori and the Blind Forest, right? Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah,
The detail.
I decided to. I made Ori in the stream, and then I made the
terrain
base
looks
afterward.
fantastic. Yeah, all the details in the grass and like the little plants just look so good. That's
and
awesome.
Chelsey even did a a resin pour painting, like just got a canvas, that you paint on,
Yeah.
and then poured a bunch of resin and crazy stuff on there. You could probably describe it better, but to make a background so we can take pictures with Ori and stuff, that it looks kind of like his
It's similar.
style. Yeah.
It didn't turn out super hot because I didn't want to waste even more resin. But
Well, and it's the first time you've done that,
yeah,
so
I've done like acrylic
it
pours,
looks really
but
cool. You'll see
That's
it in the video.
Is that going to be a is that going to be a Patreon only, or is that going to be on Colts, or yeah?
That one, it's a copyrighted character, so that one will be free.
Okay. Cool. That one, I think a lot of people. I know that the second game of that came out right in the last couple of last month or so here. So I'm sure there's a lot of people. It's funny because that game, I've actually watched a playthrough of it, and even after watching it, it's been on my bucket list of games to play, and I've never played it, but it just looks so beautiful. Like it looks like such an amazing game. Have you guys played through like a little bit of one or two, or?
I played some of the first one. I didn't finish it, but I played a decent amount of it. And yeah, it was just like, and even the storytelling, like within the first 5 minutes, it's just like, wait, I thought this was like a goofy little platformer. Why am I feeling emotions?
That's awesome. Yeah, there was a certain level with like this crow, I remember, and it looked insanely difficult. I kept watching it was like the streamer that was dying over and over and over again, and I'm like, it's like maybe one of those like Cuphead or something like that, where I'm like, I don't know, like it's one of those games where
it's quite that hard. But
no, yeah,
it's not easy for sure.
Yeah, Cuphead's definitely one of those games where I'm like, I've wanted to play it as well, but I know that it's like I don't get mad at video games too often, but that would probably be one scenario where like Aaron would come in here and be like, "Is everything okay?" I'm like, "Yes, it's just a stupid level,"
right?
Let's see. All right, one more question from Chris Riley. He says, "As a YouTuber, what is the goal for you both? You do awesome stuff. I just wanted to know if you have something that you are aspiring to."
Yeah, well, eventually, the goal would be to make the YouTube the full-time job. We haven't been able to give the channel all the love that it deserves over the past year and a half at this point, because we've had a pretty unfortunate series of events regarding our dogs. And, for us, our dogs are like our children. And we had one dog that ended up going through 4 surgeries and ended up losing him in October. And then now we just yesterday we went to Omaha, which is like 3 hours away from us, to take her to a specialized vet there because she needs a surgery as well. So we kind of feel
had this morning.
Yeah.
So we'll be picking her up tomorrow, and
so we just kind of every time we feel like we're back to normal and getting our feet underneath of us, we get knocked down again. So, but hopefully we're hoping to kind of push through, and we still try to release videos we're probably about once a month, but we're trying to get it back up to once a week. So that's the goal. So short-term goal is getting back to 1 video a week. Long-term goal would be to make this our full-time job and make even bigger and cooler stuff.
Yeah, I feel like too, if you do get to the point where all you need is a hype man, that having the YouTube channel be a really good place to promote the game, like whatever the following you've built up. Certainly with some things like video game models, you're gonna have a demographic of people that are like, yeah, this guy's stuff is awesome. I totally, even if they're like the game isn't their end goal, but they just want to support you, it's going to be really good for at least getting the game kind of off the ground if you do get to that point. And regardless too, like I've seen your guys's content and your guys's viewers and stuff. Like you guys have a big community of people that totally love you and like have got you guys' back. So regardless of whether it takes a lot of time to like get back on your feet and stuff like that, I guarantee you there's going to be an army of hugs and like people that are just ready to greet you guys and be super excited at what you guys see next. So I mean, the fact that you guys have been able to keep even a video a month with everything going on, like that's awesome. Like it's and like seriously, like you guys coming on today, I'm super thankful to have you both on, because I know that again, like this is not ideal timing at all. So I really appreciate you guys coming on for the hour for the show and just kind of sharing some insight to what you guys are up to and stuff like that. It's really awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us, for one, and two, the community has been awesome. Like, I think aside from my brother, every friend that we have has come from the 3D printing community, and it's some of the most amazing people we've ever met. So we're extremely grateful for everyone that's been supportive of us and stuck around to see you know,
The
what we
adventures.
do when we post once a month.
Yeah. I think that's also what, when 3D printing was just supposed to be a tool for my project, once I got involved with the community and seeing everybody, like, that's what kept me, you know, like, that's what's,
For sure.
like, made me so obsessed about it. Is like, yes, I love the technology, I think it's awesome, but I love what it's, like, all about. I love the creativity. I love the, like, all of the good things that it does, and, you know, all the people it entertains. Like, it's just such a, like, unique, and we're such a, like, quirky group of individuals, you know. It's
For
awesome.
sure.
Like, it's so rad,
For
man.
sure.
Like, I totally dig it. Let me see, I think we've got like one more program, or one more question. Kirsty says, I may have missed this, but what kind of programming do you do for your day job?
Oh, went a little robotic on there. Can you say
Oh,
that
sorry.
again?
Yeah, Kirsty's asking, what kind of programming is it that you do for your day job?
Oh, okay. Well, right now, I work for a company that has a call center, and I make internal web applications for that call center. So it's basically like, the big one that I've done, it's an attendance program that helps track whether people are showing up to do their job or not, and disciplining them if they're not. And then I also, like, there's a timekeeping thing. So with all the COVID stuff going on right now, people are working from home, which is a new thing. So how people clock in and out, I wrote a program to help them with that. And then I wrote basically like it's a dashboard that has like just a bunch of information for, you know, resources for them to, like, how do I input an order? If someone calls, they can go to, you know, one of those pages and it'll walk them through. So just resources like that. I use like, it's web based, just to make it easy for them to get it. So like, obviously on the front end, you've got like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that type of stuff. I use jQuery pretty heavily just because it makes JavaScript a lot more manageable. And then on the back end, I use it's a Windows server and C#. And then, you know, I've got like a SQL database, and we use SQL Server and stuff like that. So
Too much smart stuff for me.
Is it a team that you work with, or are you pretty much solo dev?
it was me.
It's crazy, man. We've got, because we've transitioned to working from home, and we had to basically jump, transition to a system that we were never set up for. But luckily, we've got like, you know, like a team of devs that are working together to like implement features and patch bugs and stuff like that. So I would imagine like you're like I'm the guy. Well, I guess.
Well, and I guess to be clear, there is like an IT department that handles like, you know, VPNs and getting people laptops. I don't do any of that.
Yeah.
But like, I make the software that allows them to do specialized things, I guess.
Gotcha. Well, that probably is also a reason why with video game stuff you don't mind doing it all yourself, because that's kind of like, it's kind of your style. It sounds like, you know,
it really is,
you're like, I mean, at least if you do it yourself, you don't have to like wait on someone else, or like, you know, like you know what you want, and if you're able to figure it out, hopefully can get to that goal, you know. So like,
Right.
that's at least one benefit of it. But that's,
Yeah, I mean, I would love someone to collaborate with, but you know, distance is a thing. There's not a lot of people physically near me. And two, it's hard to you find someone passionate when there's literally zero money involved. So
yeah, it has to be like something that you're, like you said, passionate about, because typically if you're not passionate about something, one of the big incentives is monetary, you know, like how, like, can I make money off of this? So, but I mean, they're definitely, again, don't know, I can't point you to the person, but there's certainly people out there, you know, that do
definitely.
things just for the heck of it, or because it makes them happy, or because it's like their little baby. But, you know, I could also see though too, like, if this is something that you really want a certain way, that like maybe it would be tough to like have someone else give their, like, you know, but like shift your direction of what you're trying to go with it. You know, I could see that being a challenge as well, you know, finding someone that you not only is willing to do it, but that you mesh with well. I'm sure that's equally important, having a, you know, a teammate that, you know, you can really get along with. But at least you got Chelsey, who's you know, the you know, what I described you guys as the dynamic duo. So maybe it'll be a in-house production, you know.
Yeah, well, and she's taken over. Like, I mean, I honestly cannot remember the last time I started a print. She's just completely taken over all of the 3D printing stuff. Like, she's built our last 3 FDM printers.
Awesome.
And yeah, she set up all the SLA. She's just kind of taken off with that and rolled with it. Because I was always just like a I get it to a point, like if it works, I'm good, but I never took the time to like, oh, there's like kind of a weird issue, there's like a little bump here, and you have to spend like a week trying to diagnose that issue. And I was never interested in that. So she's been amazing in that regard. And yeah, 3D modeling, I don't know what I'd do without her.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like, Chelsey, you're much more like you've got to have it like I guess the word perfectionist, because you said yourself that like if you have a little something that's off about it, that it drives you crazy and you got to get it figured out. So
yeah, for sure. Sometimes to a downfall, I am like that, but
yeah, but the end results have been absolutely just incredible. So again, like it pays off as long as you know when you're like, nope, this is 99.9% there. I like accept my gift,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, I would say
20% takes 80% of the time. I just don't worry about it.
Yeah, 80-20 is even good, man. I live somewhere between the 70-30 and 75-25, so 80-20 is still pretty damn good. But all right, I think that's most of the questions. So I think we'll probably end the stream there. Thank you guys again, Garrett and Chelsey from Chaos Core Tech, for coming on and talking a little bit about how you got into it, favorite models, some tips and tricks and resources. Like I said earlier, I'll place links in the description. Your guys' channel should certainly be linked in the description. I'll make sure I link that, and I'll also put your guys' Patreon for anyone that wants to follow you guys or wants some of those badass Goblin D&D characters. And then also, this will be hosted, so if anyone that sees it after the fact, you can watch it, and it'll also be in podcast format. So with all of the time we've got indoors, there's certainly, I think, some time to just turn on some audio and listen to something while you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. So I'll let you guys kind of do a little outro if you want, or say anything that you want to say, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having us and
Absolutely.
talking with us. I feel like, especially with Murph not happening this year, it's nice to be able to talk to people again.
Totally.
But yeah, thank you everyone for watching and being interested. If you haven't watched us on YouTube, that's probably where we post the most. Well, not the most, but the highest quality content, I suppose. So it's just Chaos Core Tech on YouTube. And then if you want to probably follow Chelsey on Twitter, Chelsey423, and it's Chels, like CHELS, and then the letter C, and then 423. If you want to see what we're doing behind the scenes, because she's pretty good about posting. I'm terrible about posting. Antisocial, and that includes social networks. So,
I will say, you never post anything on your main Twitter account. Like I clicked on it and I was like, no, it still exists.
Yeah, it's still there, but yeah, I'm just really bad about it. But yeah, and then we have a Patreon, and we mostly we're about to start a podcast. We just reached the number of patrons to start a monthly podcast with me and Chelsey, so we're going to be doing that.
Awesome.
And yeah, we post our models there and just all sorts of fun stuff. So,
yeah. And if anyone needs commissions, message me on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
We are open for commissions.
Paying for some dog surgery, so
Totally.
I'm open for commissions.
Yes.
Yep.
I will ask you guys once this ends too to just send me like the things you want me to link in the description, so that way I get like your Twitter and the Patreon and stuff like that, just to make sure I've got all those links for anyone that is interested in checking out the stuff or helping you guys out, or anything like that, being supportive. So
Appreciate that.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you guys, everyone that tuned in, and yeah, look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.